All right. Question for Ellen and Chris. You two are going to answer this together.
Answer it simultaneously.
And you're going to answer it, Ellen, because you've been to Egypt more than any of us. And Chris, you're going to answer it because you've talked to more Egyptian experts than any of us. The question is, how are the pyramids made?
We don't know.
I would
Good
think
answer,
they were
Ellen.
made by man because we are an incredibly industrious species. It's not perfect. I'm going to parrot Graham's position on this, which is if it were absolutely perfect, then it probably would have been made by somebody whom was from not from this earth because it would have been exactly aligned to due north. It's not. It is not an exactly perfectly masoned building. There are gaps, there are imperfections, but I would honestly say that the internal ramp theory would be the closest logical method that was used.
I just want to say that the 51 Project gave themselves away. Their answer was Bunnings, and only Chance and I can understand that. Bunnings is like the Home Depot of Australia. And that was their answer. That it was Bunnings. So, hey, 51 Project, shout out from Thailand to Australia. You look, yes, I agree. One of the things that I am really kind of frustrated by is the popularity of Ancient Aliens. And the reason that I'm frustrated by Ancient Aliens is that Ancient Aliens makes it sound like all the cool shit was done by aliens. And
Yeah.
what that does is that completely disempowers humanity, right? Humanity
Absolutely.
is awesome. And particularly in different yugas, like we're in the dark ages right now, like we're completely disconnected. We don't have a live stream to gnosis, right? But in the golden ages where we were completely open to all there is, we accomplished the most amazing feats, right? And so,
Absolutely.
yes, I agree with humans as the answer.
Absolutely.
How? We have the most amazing book by a guy called either Klesson Harvey or Harvey Klesson. Talk about that.
I don't know what point you're going to make.
All right. Well, anyway, Harvey Klesson took the pyramid text, and this kind of goes to Jafar's point. Should he retranslate Budge? In my opinion, because I'm all about the materialistic prison paradigm, and how that limits our possibility in terms of what we are able to know, study, explore, understand, we've cut ourselves off entirely from a whole slew of dimensions of what's possible, including magic, including spiritual, including ethereal, including astral. And we're only kind of looking at this very, very tiny slice of what is possible for the human. And we are in the Kali Yuga. This is the most materialistic time. However, that is not how we are all the time. And so there is a summer of consciousness for humanity, just like there is a winter of consciousness for humanity. And this book by, is it Harvey Klesson or Klesson Harvey? Klesson Harvey talks about the utilization of a meditation technique where he projects the pharaoh.
Oh yeah, instead of the spine as the axis of your chakras, there's an extension about 7 to 8 inches out from your forehead that have these planes. And so you can see hieroglyphs like this, that there's a pharaoh and he has this axis coming out of his forehead and these different things. And so Klesson Harvey is interesting. He lived in Idlewild. People know California. There's a cool
California
town north of Los Angeles called Idlewild. And Klesson was just this absolutely normal guy, real salt of the earth guy. He was sitting down one day. He kind of sat too hard on a bench and he just hit his spinal column the wrong way. And he had a spontaneous trauma-based Kundalini experience. And his was very much like mine, where it took the form of this series of insights. And for him, I don't know whether he started studying the pyramid texts after that, or he had been studying them. And he saw them shift, like when you're wearing those glasses and you look at that photograph and suddenly it becomes 3D. Klesson Harvey had this experience where he understood what Jeremy Nadler wrote about so eloquently, that the pyramid texts are a handbook for how to escape the physical world. And it has very much to
It's
do with
shamanistic.
it's the shamanistic thing. So instead of dealing with the chakras along your spine, you deal with these imaginary chakras that project out of your third eye. And interesting body of work. And it was very unique, but I liked it because it was one of those things that came to him in this Kundalini moment. One of the things we talk about there that's so fascinating about Kundalini is it's almost always attendant with this flood of information, this rush of information or epiphanies. And my kind of pet theory about this is you're reconnecting with things that you've learned in previous lives, and the Kundalini event connects you with all of your previous. There's a big moment in masonry apparently where you get to see all your past faces, what your face looked like before this 100 times back. And it's a quite closely guarded secret of theirs. But there are these moments where suddenly the partition
That's like
between
defending your life.
lives. Yeah, very Albert Brooks. Hilarious movie. If anybody's not seen Defending Your Life by Albert Brooks, one of the funniest movies.
Oh,
ever.
yes, yes.
Yeah, and so there was actually a kiosk, a coin-operated machine in the afterlife in this movie where you could put in a quarter and see what your faces looked like and how you died each of your successive deaths. But there is something, I've told this story over and over again, that I've always been a very lazy guitar player. I've never tried that hard and I've never worked that hard for it. And after my Kundalini experience, I had this moment where it was like I was reconnected with 30 lifetimes of effort, where I've tried and learned music theory and
It's
techniques and
anamnesis.
strange. And yeah, and that's where we came up across the term anamnesis, where Plato was even talking about this, that
Re-remembering.
on some level you remember everything that you've learned. That's why some things, even whether we don't have facts in front of us, we just hear some things and they have a ring of truth because we know that we've verified this in some previous incarnation. And so there are incredibly mystical moments where we're reunited with some warehouse of information that we've had in previous incarnations, and they tend to happen around the Kundalini event. And so for some people it's very abstract and informational, and other people it's really quite visceral and emotional. But mine was very information based, and it came as a result of an epiphany, and it was just an epiphany storm.
It's like you know everything all in that moment.
I think I know everything.
You think I mean,
But you're
yeah,
constantly
he
finding
thinks
out.
he knows everything every day, but in this particular moment, he knew everything.
No, I knew I had the answer to one particular question that I was working on, which was I was really incubating about something about ancient Egypt and about symbolism.
Which is what episode series
Well,
2
magical
was.
Egypt. This
Yeah,
was
Magical
the
Egypt,
seed
yeah.
of magical Egypt came from this one moment where I was doing the Mantak Shia protocols. I was up around 90 days of cultivation and did not expect anything to happen. But
It did.
I was doing this thing. And also another thing that came to light from this Peter Kingsley book, he talked about the difference between poetry and incantation, where poetry are words, they're very beautiful and they lift you up in a certain way. But incantation is actually a magical technology where the words themselves are the ladder that you climb into these
Yeah.
mystical states or into the afterlife. So the Mayans and Peruvians had a character that played the flute, and the flute would show you how to get to the next life. And so there's lots of context for that. But anyway,
But
The
anyway,
Masons
I'm
do
going to go
something
back to
differently
Harvey
with-
Klesson. Sorry, Dylan. Who was saying?
I was going to say the Freemasonry has something very similar with regards to Jacob's ladder, or at least Jacob's ladder is used as a metaphor.
Metaphor. Yes, indeed. Well, I'm going to complete this thought. Harvey Klesson talks about this blackness that you can find that is only the blackness. And it makes me think of Aaron Cheek's Rabito Press, because
black.
Aaron talks about this thing, the perfect black. And so this perfect black is like beyond a black that you see when you meditate. And once you achieve the perfect black, which I've tried this meditation and I haven't even been able to achieve the perfect black. But anyway,
You can see where the mandalas come from, because if you close your eyes, there's this place called the foveal focal point.
That's
It has
it,
something
yeah.
to do with the shape of your optic nerves, where if you close your eyes, you have this one point right in the center that's darker than everything else. And you realize when you start doing this work that the mandala, the Vedic mandalas, are actually like a heads up display of your inner world, your inner vision, and that it forms a grid from the center out. And so it has all of the geometric progressions, it has all the colors, and it has this sacred geometry. And there's something about just looking at a mandala that in about 30 seconds, you move over to almost completely right hemisphere dominance for some reason that people don't really probably will never understand.
Mentally you found that does that.
All of the mandalas, the Indian mandalas.
No, but there was one specific one. That we found.
There's a whole bunch.
Well, anyway, in season 2, Chance talks about a specific mandala that if you stare it, at it for a mountain of time. I can't even talk anymore.
No, it's all mandala.
Champagne.
It's what the mandala, it's what it is. It's what it's for. It charts your inner landscape, and then this inner world, when you actually know those old technologies, that's sort of a heads up display or a chart about visions that occur and the significance of visions. And I'm not doing it justice at all, but there's a reason why those things are so popular
So
in the
bring
Vedic culture.
lesson home. Bring it home.
Yeah, you bring it home.
Okay, so Harvey Klesson talks about you got to do this perfect black thing. You got to find the perfect black, which, as I said, I haven't been able to do. You find the perfect black, and then you take the chakras and you visualize them out your third eye instead of up your spine. So that is a different method of visualizing the chakras. You take them out, and when you can actually do that and hold that, the pharaoh can use levitation to basically put the pyramid together in his head. And that was how the pyramid was formed. Now, whether that is possible or not, it's a fabulous idea. And I just fell in love with it. In fact, I kind of tried to download all his website before he died, and then I lost it because it was so inspiring to me, the thought that we have so much potential. And if you
Right.
look back in all the ancient texts tell us we are gods. We are gods in creation. And this book told us how to actually go about it. And I loved it. So if I want to answer the question how the pyramids were built, I'm going to say through Harvey Klesson's meditation technique, because I'm rooting for the power of humanity becoming gods on earth.
The
True,
real
true.
answer is
Well,
nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Nobody-
Probably nobody ever will know. But there's some. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Ellen, go
no, I was
down.
going to add, that's what I started with, like, nobody knows. But they had technology that we don't have. And we get stuck in thinking that we're the best thing that ever happened. And we're not, that's not true. That's not true. Greater
you go, girl.
civilizations have come and gone. They knew, and Chris Dunn has done a tremendous amount of work on machining. And when you're there and he points, that's Chris Dunn was on one of the tours I was on.
Wow.
That's right. I forgot to say that before. And when we go to museums, he starts pointing out where the machine, you can see evidence of machining. Like
You can see the symmetry. It's almost impossible to
It's
hand
impossible,
carve
right?
perfectly symmetrical face. Go ahead.
Right. No, so that's, I concur with that. I mean, there's stuff we don't know, but it was certainly man-made, and we are so much more capable than we can even imagine.
There's a great video. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm done. Sorry.
No,
I'm rambling.
I keep interrupting you. You keep interrupting Ellen.
Can you tell that I work for the Fox Network? The Fox Network pioneered the art of stepping on people's lines. Maybe
Faith under fire.
Yeah, man, what a horrible cancer on polite discourse that Fox News has been. Anyway, so on YouTube right this minute, if you type in acoustic levitation, there are these sociological research papers back from like 1910, 1920, where people would go to Madagascar and Pakistan
Tibet too.
and Tibet, huge in Tibet, with the bowls, the Tibetan bowls and all those things that produce those sonic waves. So there's this video that really is quite technically apt, where you get a ring of people in a circle, and they'd have certain air instruments and acoustic drums, big like timpani drums. And then there'd be a row back of heavier, deeper drums, and they had the math all figured out. So you sit kind of an amphitheater style, and the convergence of this arc. So the way parabolic antennas focus a signal, they would be in a ring so that the sonic focus of all their sound would be in one specific point. And they would lift giant stones. They would have just frivolous contests about how big of stones they could lift. And it was absolutely documented back in the 20s. And you can type acoustic levitation now. We met a guy, John Lee
Yeah,
at
John Lee.
Caltech, where Einstein used to teach in Pasadena. Who did anti-gravity. There's this awesome Asian guy who did anti-gravity. He was also the leader of Falun Dafa.
Yes, Falun Dafa, who is so interesting.
We met him because, the
in
thing about
LA.
Chinese people that are Falun Dafa people that get thrown in jail in China, they're preferred organ donors, involuntary organ donors, because they're so healthy. It is horrible. So we met him to do a story on that, and we ended up absolutely being blindsided by his day job, which was levitation. And he showed us you could use 3 octaves of sound to levitate anything. He didn't lift big stones. He was lifting little, he lifted a spider for us. Man, the spider hated it. Spider did not care. But anyway, the point is, it's been documented
possible.
that you can lift things. The whole Ed Leeds Scallon and Coral Castle story is an amazing story that is still a mystery, but has to do with using sound to lift improbably large stones. And then there's another thing that very few people talk about. If you're actually there on the pyramid, you're climbing around on it, it has little seashells embedded in it and all this stuff that suggests that it was underwater for hundreds of thousands of years. But also, there's pictures of Egyptians doing this. There's this little thing that you get with measured 4 pieces of wood, and there's hinges so you can rearrange it. So you carry it. It's almost no trouble to carry it. You take run a hose up, use an Archimedes and screw, or any way you can get mud up to people, and they would literally pour mud into these square molds. And it's not mud, it's stone, it's liquid stone. Egypt is, I think maybe we all know this, the oldest formula for cement comes from Egypt, and it's still to this day one of the most viable and best, cheapest formulas for construction cement. So they knew how to make liquid pourable stone. And same with Andes in Peru and all those Peruvian walls. You see these little nipples coming out of the wall.
Yeah.
And what those nipples are from is this feeding hose that fed the liquid rock into the mold. And then when you took the hose away, the stone would expand a little bit. And so you get these little nipples on the rocks. And so that's how you
Brings
can
up my
tell.
whole psychic building.
These aren't mutually exclusive, folks. These are just,
He loves to blow up my
oh, I
bubble.
don't. We'll get to the bottom of this with a simple arm wrestle. The winner of the arm wrestle.
I know the pity is I'll probably win.
I'll have a massive heart attack and she wanted to embarrass me in public.
I'm sorry for interrupting you.
No, that was worth it. That was funny.